Okay, afternoon everybody, and thank you for turning up. It's good to see so many people here, especially at this time on a Friday. I know I say that every time, but you know I do mean it. I know it's coming towards the weekend, and you guys are probably looking forward to winding down a little bit. Oh, okay. Don't know why we've only got one projector working. Never mind. So, what we're going to cover today is a little bit about reflective writing, and in particular, what we're looking for in terms of the assessments. We want you to write this. What are the sort of things that you should be looking at? Okay. Can I just see a quick show of hands? How many people have actually done any form of reflective writing before? Nobody. Okay. That doesn't surprise me, and that's one of the main reasons that we are amalgamating it into this course, okay, into this module. You're going to be doing more and more reflective practice as you move through the second and the third years. Specifically in the third year, when you're looking at the final year project, going out doing consultancy for businesses, you are going to be asked to reflect on a multitude of things: what went well, what didn't go so well, what you did differently next time, and so on and so on. So one thing I will say, and a caveat that I'll put on reflective writing to start off with, it will seem really strange to you, okay? Because up until now, when you've done your A-levels and so on, and certainly with essays that you've been doing for other modules that aren't reflective, you will have been told categorically that you do not write in the first person. So in other words, I did this, I did that, I thought this, I thought that. It should all be done in the third person, okay? Reflective writing is different, primarily because it's about you as individuals. It's about your feelings, it's about your emotional intelligence, it's about what you individually have learnt from the experience, have picked up from the experience, and so on. So it's very, very simple, to write a reflective piece and then read it back and think that you're back in primary school when you're doing, the daily diaries and things like this. I did this, I did that, and so on and so on. So it is going to feel weird to you. Okay, I will, pray see what we're going to say with that before you even start. Okay. If it doesn't feel strange, then that usually means that you aren't doing it correctly. Okay. So, first question I want to pose really is what is reflection all about? Okay. And where does the name come from? Well, put simply, it's exactly as if you're looking in a mirror. You see a reflection and you analyze yourselves. Okay. Something that we all do by human nature. But what we're trying to do with reflective writing and reflective assessment is get that into a structure where you can use it effectively to analyze your state of mind, what you were thinking, and a number of different things around how you would improve moving into the future. Okay? So reflection, as it says there, could be a multitude of different things. Okay? But it's often around thinking about situations that have occurred, pondering about things that have actually happened to you, asking yourself questions. Okay, again, this is something that we do on a very frequent basis. Okay, I'm sure you've all asked yourself a multitude of questions already today. Like, why did I bother turning up for this lecture? That is a form of reflection. Okay, you are reflecting on decisions that you've actually made. As it says there, making sense of things, learning from the experience, and helping you to plan for the future. So this isn't just a linear journey where you start at one point, you reflect on it, and that's it. It's finished. You don't do anything else with it. It's reciprocating. Okay, it's a cycle. It's something that you should do all the time. Okay, so you're reflecting on something, you're improving it. You're reflecting on it again, you're improving it, and so on and so on. So, much like blogging, have we got any bloggers here? Who writes a blog? Okay. Who tweets? couple of people? Who writes posts in Facebook? Come on, more of you must be using social media than that. Where'd you get your ideas from? Yeah? It's either organic ideas that you pick up from your own thoughts and things like that when you're walking around, or it's other people's ideas that you are retweeting or pushing forward or whatever you want to call it. But sources of organic reflection come from multiple places, okay? And they can often hit you at the time that you least expect it. So you could be lying awake in bed at night, or you could be walking to the gym, or you could be in the pub, or whatever, okay? And these flashes of inspiration will come to you. But they can come from a number of different areas. So everyday events is probably the main one that any source of reflection comes from. But with regards to the assessment that we're talking about, we're asking you specifically to reflect on two very specific areas. First one is your own personal experiences of working in a group. Okay. The second one is group report or group experience of the SimVenture scenario that you've actually been given. Okay. So out of that, you're going to get a number of these different areas. There's going to be positive experiences. There's going to be negative experiences. Okay? There's going to be unusual and eventful incidents. So things that were happening that you don't expect to happen. And they can then fall into the categories of also being either positive or negative experiences. Routine activities. So we're asking you to keep meeting minutes as part of your reflection. That would be seen as a routine activity. Important events and meaningful events. Okay, so when something has happened that has created a milestone for you, okay, something that you can look back at and think, okay, yeah, we've achieved some goals there. Now we need to move on to the next stage. Okay. Give you an example of day-to-day life. There's some quotes there, okay, that we've pulled from a number of different areas, but those are sort of things that you can start to learn to reflect on, okay, before you start writing these assessments. So, I'm always late for work. Is that a positive or a negative, do you think? Negative. Why is it negative? Any ideas? Come on, shout at me, you're like mutes. Why is it negative to be late for work? Is anybody alive out there? Okay, negativity, okay, is subjective. So what I mean by that is, yes, it is negative to be late for work, because punctuality, being responsible, being accountable for your actions is something that employers are going to be looking for from the likes of you, okay? But you need to look at that in its context of how you can actually turn that around to be a positive. So why are you always late for work? Might it be that the bus is always full? It's a good example of what's been happening around here recently. So how can you actually change that to make it easier for you to get in? Perhaps you buy a bike, you cycle in. So you get another positive element, which is that you get fitter, you feel better. Okay, so a negative impact shouldn't just be a negative impact for its own sake. You should be looking at it very much like you've all done SWOT analysis, haven't you? You all doing marketing at the moment, yeah? Have you done SWOT analysis yet? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. So you should always be looking at how you can turn weaknesses into strengths and how you can turn threats into opportunities. And it's the same with this. Okay. So it's important for a number of different reasons, as we've said. For you, in the short term, it's important because it's what you're going to be assessed on from this module. But some of the key things that it will do for you moving forward, and the top one there, bridging the theory-practice gap, is really important, okay? Because whereas traditionally business management degrees like this would be taught in a way that you would have lectures, you'd have seminars, you'd then be examined, usually by written examination, and that would form the basis of your degree. Now, we're actually asking you to take on experiential factors as well, so actually going out and doing what you're being trained to do. So, to do that, you need to be able to bridge that gap between theory and practice. And reflection is a fantastic way of doing that, because it makes you think about what you've learned, but also where there are gaps in your knowledge. Okay? It reduces practices based on custom and practice. So we're talking a little bit here about organizational culture. So, you know, the fact that you go into an organization and it's the way that we've always done things around here. Okay, that's not going to change. Corporate culture, organizational culture is probably the most difficult of all aspects to affect change on within an organization. Excuse me. So, reflection, either personal reflection or group reflection, allows you to identify what areas can be changed and what the impacts of those changes are going to be. Develop an understanding of your practice, the decisions made, lessons learned, and importantly there, the implication for future practice. So it's going back to this, this whole notion of continuous improvement. Okay? Nothing linear, it's all reciprocated. Okay, so you need to develop a particular attitude when you were looking at being reflective and when you're looking at writing reflective pieces. So you need to get yourself into a particular mindset. And that mindset means that you're being open and honest, and that's probably the most important one there, is being open and honest. But from that, you are willing to learn from the experiences. Not every experience is going to be a good one. You will have failures, okay? Not just in this, but in everything you do in life, you will have failures. But those failures, how you approach those failures, whether it's negatively in terms of, well, you know, that didn't work, so I'm not trying that again, or why didn't that work? How could I potentially make it work in the future? Is going to have massive impacts on a lot of the assessments that you're going to be doing moving forward, but from an employability perspective, how employers will actually analyse and treat you. Okay? Able to make time for reflection. We've all got time to put posts on Facebook and all that sort of stuff, yeah? So one thing that is always good, and I try and get people to do it, I know time is of the essence for a lot of us, and it's short, but actually starting to write a blog, just with your thoughts about the day. Okay, using a reflective process. So what's gone well today? What hasn't gone so well? How have I been feeling? Why have I been feeling like that? Okay. Anything positive? How can you actually take further advantage of that? So it's a skill set that you can actually learn. Willing to share and discuss your experiences. Again, a difficult one, because we're all very willing to share our good experiences. Like if we've won 25 quid in the lottery or something like that, or we've got good marks in an exam, we're willing to discuss those experiences. But what about the negative ones? Okay, that's where this honesty kicks in again. Okay, and it's very difficult, especially amongst your peers, to admit that perhaps you have a gap in your knowledge, or that you did something and it didn't go so well. Okay, but if there's a culture, a reflective culture going on, which is what we're trying to do with you as a group, then that shouldn't be an issue. So where good marks are going to come from, and this is a bit of a major hint for you, is where you can look at the negative experiences, both as a group and individually, and discuss those in terms of what you learnt from the experience. Okay? So as it says there as well, being motivated to replay, describe and analyse the experiences. It's a painful experience a lot of the time, going over something in your head, or as a group, going over something as a group, and analysing where it went wrong, okay? Or where it went right, so you can make it better next time. And last on there is this ability to make an action plan. So it's no good reflecting and saying, yeah, okay, X, Y, Z didn't go so well. We know the reasons for it. And that's it. You leave it there. Okay? It's not about that. It's about the most important bit is changing what you do and your practice in the future for continuous improvement. Okay, stop me at any time if anybody's got any questions on any of this, because, as I said, it is important for your assessments. Okay, some of this is a little bit, it's a nice to have type situation, right? Like having a pen and paper around at all times. How many of you carry a notebook around with you? A couple of you. I'm actually surprised, because usually when I ask that question, a lot of people would say, no, I don't. And what I mean by a notebook is something that you can pull out quickly and make some notes on. Yeah, you might carry notebooks around with you for lectures and things like that, but I'm guessing that not many of you have got an inside or back pocket with a notebook and pencil in, okay? But what do you have that you can make notes on? A phone, thank you. Somebody is alive out there. So a phone, okay? So the notes application on your phone is really useful for doing this, because you could just put one-word things in as they occur to you, okay? And part of that occurring to you, this spontaneity, is you need to make sure that you're aware that when something does happen to you, and you know this could be, well, it probably will be, as I said, with something to do with the assessments that you're doing at the moment, that you write that down, even if it's just one word. Okay? Don't worry about the structure, order, spelling, or grammar. Again, what I would tend to do is, as they don't try and write something out as a reflective piece of writing straight off, but just put bullet points down. Okay? Be imaginative and make sense later with the help of formalized structure. And we're going to go through two academic theories on reflection in a minute, okay, which will focus a lot more on how you should be doing this and how you should be structuring it. Okay. We're going to do a little bit of pair work just for 5 minutes. What I'd like you to do, don't worry about making notes, okay? I'd like you, over 5 minutes, to speak to the person next to you. If you're in a group of 3, that's fine. That's not a problem. So speak to the people next to you and describe an experience, either a positive experience or a negative experience. Okay? If it's a positive experience, I want you to think about what's negative about it. And if it's a negative experience, I want you to think about what's positive about it. Okay? Off you go. Just have a quick discussion. Very quick. I want you to see how quick and easy you can do this. Okay, just a few more minutes. Okay. Right. Do we have a volunteer that is willing to tell us what the experience was, what was positive about it, what was negative about it, and what you do differently next time? Anybody want to volunteer, or am I going to have to pick on somebody? No volunteers. Okay. I'm going to pick on you because you were nodding as if you'd done it. Okay, go on. Okay. What are the positives that you get from that? No. No. Liverpool in Istanbul in 2005 was the best comeback in Champions League history. But, okay, you're looking for the positive in it. Okay? So, you can't really affect change on that, but what would you do differently next time? As an experience for you? Yeah. Okay. So it's a possibility, isn't it? Okay, but we're looking at all the possibilities. But this is about you. You must remember it's about you. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Okay, so let's move on from there. Putting your thoughts down on paper. Okay, I'm not going to go through this with you because this is part of what we've been doing in the seminar. But was it an easy thing to do? Did you find it easy, or did you find it quite strange? Strange at looking at it in, from two different perspectives? Okay. Did it change your views in any way? Have you changed the football team that you're supporting yet? No? Okay, so, there's emotion involved in there as well, which may be a barrier to change. Okay, so there's a number of different angles that you can actually look at with that. Okay, so the first of the academic theories, and just before I go into this, one of the other questions that I tend to get a lot when people are new to reflective writing is about referencing. Okay, so again, we're always on at you to reference correctly, make sure that passages are quoted and so on, yeah? So, in terms of reflection, because you were writing about yourselves, it can be quite difficult to reference because they're your own thoughts and feelings, aren't they? Okay? This isn't something that you've actually got from a book. However, okay, what we should be doing, and this goes back to a slide that I showed earlier, bridging this theory and practice gap, what you should be trying to do is relate your experiences back to some academic theory that you have that you've actually used. So, for instance, okay, if you were doing, okay, good example. So you're doing introducing a new bike on SimVenture as part of your group assessment, yeah. So the market research element of that is important. So what tools are you potentially using to do the market research? Okay, you might be using PESTLE to analyze the market environment. So that, you would obviously reference that academic model. Does that make sense? Yeah? So your practice, you should be referencing it back to an academic model. Also, how you set yourselves up in groups. Yeah? So I know the seminar group leaders did Belbin exercises with you, okay, in terms of personality profiling. That, again, is an academic model that can be referenced. Okay, and that's what we're looking for in terms of referencing. In terms of the reflective model that you're using, there's a number of them, but the two reflective models that I'm going to go through today, and are referenced at the end of this presentation as well, a Gibbs reflective model from 1988 and Driscoll's from 2000. Okay, So reflection and reflective practice isn't a new topic. It's really come more into fashion, not back into fashion, but more into fashion in the last couple of years, because of the power of it is evident to see. Okay, so there's basically 6 parts to this cycle, and that goes through describing the situation, what your feelings were, evaluation, analysis, conclusion, your action plan, and then your action plan then feeds as a cycle back into the description. Okay, so the description part of that. Remember, this is related to a specific event that you were reflecting on. So you're looking at those type of questions. Where was I? Who else was there? What were you doing? What happened, etc. So you're describing, I was doing this, I was doing that, we were doing this, we were doing that. Okay? The feelings. Now, this is where an element of emotional intelligence comes into this, okay? Because we are trying to tap in as much as we can to our emotional state, or our emotional state at the point that this incident was actually occurring. So, how were you feeling before that? Okay, at the beginning. What were you thinking about? This is an important one. What did other people's actions make you think and feel? Okay, so you're analysing here how you were reacting to the group. Okay, how did I feel about the outcome? Yeah, was it good? Did it work in favour for me? Or did it hack me off? And what do you think about it now? So has time changed your perception on the way you're feeling about things? Evaluation, next stage. So we're looking at the positives and negatives here. Okay. If it was a positive experience, so what was good about the experience for you, the team, and for others, that's important. Okay. But you should also, as I showed you in that brief exercise that we did there, what the bad was about the experience for you as well. Okay. You need to be looking to balance it out, and that's where the evaluation comes through. So what might have been a fantastic event for you, there are going to be some bad parts to it as well. Okay, so you need to analyse those, try and dig out those bad bits and address them. Likewise, if it's a bad experience for you, your team, or for others, you need to try and tease out what the good elements are from that. Okay, which invariably will be what you've actually learned from the experience. The analysis of it. So breaking the event down into its component pieces, into its chunks. Yeah. So look at your input into the incident, the event. Yeah. What did you do well? And what didn't you do so well? And this really is where the honesty angle has got to come in. You've got to be honest with yourself and honest with others. And believe me, it's a lot of the time it is harder to be honest with yourself than it is to be honest with other people. What did others do well? And again, honesty is important here. Did it go as expected? So, setting up the team or whatever, you had big hopes for it, but everybody fell out at the end of it. Okay, so that didn't go as expected. If not, why not? Okay, and then lastly, this is linking it back. So what theory or research helps me to understand the experience? And that last one, from an analysis perspective, is really, really important, because that is where, excuse me, your academic referencing is going to come in. The conclusion. So what we're doing is pulling all of that information together and coming up with a conclusion. Could you have done anything differently? It may be that you couldn't have done anything differently. Okay? And that's as important to find that out as it is to recognise what you possibly could do in the future. What have you learned from the experience? What have you learned about yourself, about your performance, about others, and about their performance as well? So again, you're looking at it from a number of different angles. Lastly, can this be evidence of achievement of placement outcomes and competency? And what we're trying to angle on here is the experiences that you're going through now are not just about getting a good mark in this module. It's about things that eventually, from an employability perspective, that you can put on your CV. So that you've worked in a team, okay? You've been through a reflective process. You've analysed what was good about your input, what was bad about your input. And certainly from a placement perspective and putting competencies on CVs, that's really important. The last one is the action plan. So you need to try then and take yourself out of that experience, okay, and ask yourself what you would do if a similar situation was to occur, okay, in the future. Now, there is an element of, everybody knows what a post-mortem is here, don't they, yeah? Yeah? Right. Okay, there's an element here, a fairly new theory that's come out called doing a pre-mortem. So as you are actually doing a project, you would imagine it in a month, 2 months, 3 months, however long down the line, as being a complete disaster. Okay? Why would be the point in that, do you think? Why would you imagine that what you were doing is going to be a complete failure? What would be the benefits in doing that? Okay, I'll tell you what the benefits are going to be. When you are looking at a complete failure, what it forces you to do is to work your way back to the point that you are now and analyse what things could happen to make that project a failure. And once you analyse what could happen, you can offset them to try and make sure that they don't actually happen in real life. So pre-mortem, before the death of the project, you're actually analysing what potentially could go wrong. So that's a potential other way of looking at it as well. So what aspects of my knowledge and skills could I develop or improve? How are you going to do this? Can you set yourself any goals for the future? And what outcomes and competencies do you potentially need to focus on? So this goals element here and outcomes is important, okay, because if you haven't done it already, you certainly will be doing it in certain modules, is smart objective setting. Something that you'll certainly do in marketing, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound, okay, so effective goal setting. But you can do that for yourselves as well. What have I got to do to make myself better? Okay, so that's Gibbs's model. About 12 years later, 2000, Driscoll came along and he said, yep, okay, that's a great model. However, it is far too complex. There's too many steps in it. So what he came up with was the theory of what's, basically, okay? And they are, what am I reflecting on? Okay, so what is the purpose of returning to the situation? What happened? What did I see? What was my reaction? What did other people do? So you're asking what around the actual event. Okay, and that's encompassing a number of different things that Gibbs put in place. The second part of that, the so what. So this is looking at the emotional angles, excuse me, the analysis, how that affected you and so on. So how did it make you feel? Do you still feel the same? What were the effects of my actions? What's the positive and negative elements of this, and so on? Okay. What have other people noticed about the way I do things? Now what? So what am I going to do about it? So I've looked at what the situation was. I've looked at what it means to me and to other people. Now I'm looking at what I'm going to do about it. So what are the implications of this? What if you were to do nothing? That's a really interesting question a lot of the time. And certainly one I would experience, or I'd ask you to try and experience. Okay, if you have had a big falling out with other people because you've had a clash of personalities, it might be that if you're in that situation again, doing nothing might be the best thing. Okay, but that's obviously for you to reflect on. What information and skills do you need to cope with similar experiences? How are you going to acquire them? So we're talking there about the goal setting. What's the main learning experience? And again, going back to placements and competencies, what are the levels of employability, or what are the benefits, I should say, employability benefits that I can get out of this for myself? Okay. So there's two models there that I've given you. If you are going to be successful, one of those is going to probably fit better than others. Okay, if you are very analytical and precise, then Gibbs's model is going to work well for you. If you are more creative, okay, then perhaps Driscoll's model will be a little bit better because it allows you to be a little bit freer. But you can use a combination of the two. Okay, that's perfectly acceptable. You need to experiment, as it says there, with different approaches until you find one that fits. Okay, and that includes everything that we've spoken about. So where you get the reflective material from, when you sit down and analyze it, how you write it up, etc., etc. I've seen reflections done before using just purely mind maps. Okay? Well, that's obviously not what we're asking you to do. We're asking you to write a certain number of words, but you could certainly try mind mapping it in the first instance before you start writing it up. Okay? That's a way of doing it. Commit to giving time to reflection. Okay? Remember that on your phones, you've got all of the tools that you need to be able to reflect on things. You've got a camera, you've got a dictaphone, you've got a notepad. Okay? Start small and work up to the big issues, because what you'll find is that usually a number of small issues will equal the big issue that you are trying to look at. Be open to new ideas and be open to new ways of thinking, and be honest with yourselves. You've got to be honest with yourselves, okay? And also, as it says there, be willing to challenge your assumptions and practices. Okay? So you may be absolutely 110% positive that what you're doing is the right thing. So much so that you don't listen to anybody else in your group. Okay? Most of us are like that from time to time. But part of the difficulty with reflection is that we aren't willing to change our standpoint and see things from another person's perspective. And that's just as important. So, summary of this really. Reflective writing, it helps you learn from your experiences. Helps you build on your expertise. Okay? Develops your expertise in all important areas of evidence-based practice. So in other words, where you've got to show your experience and how you've approached certain problems. It's quite a key, certainly at assessment centres for jobs. That's one of the key things that you'll end up doing. Put yourself into a situation where you had to do something, you had to lead a team, etc. And this can be really important for a portfolio of evidence. Reflective writing can be used as evidence to include in a portfolio or CV, and also help you to achieve getting a placement, getting a job, getting onto a graduate scheme, and so on. So it's an important skill to learn. Okay, those are the references. As I said, what I will do, as I've done with all of mine, Scott took you for the last two. Did he put? I haven't actually looked on Blackboard. Did he record the lectures, or have they gone up there? Has anybody looked? No. Okay. The reflection lecture notes, so all of these slides and my talking over them will be up on Blackboard within the next half hour. Does anybody have any questions? Bearing in mind, this is important for your assessment, because it's what we're looking for. Okay, if anyone has any questions and wants to talk to me one-to-one, I'll be around for a few minutes afterwards. Thank you.